Nick and Noah's love was powerful, but it was never simple. Beneath their connection ran a deep current of emotional conflict. The kind that comes when two hearts want the same thing, but struggle to find the same path. They loved each other fiercely, but that intensity often became their greatest challenge. Their emotions ran wild. Love, fear, anger, jealousy, all tangled together, making it hard to know where one feeling ended and another began. Each moment of closeness was followed by doubt, each declaration of love shadowed by the fear of losing it. It wasn't because they didn't trust each other. It was because they felt too much, cared too deeply, and couldn't imagine a world where the other didn't exist. Nick was calm on the surface, but inside, he battled his insecurities. He often wondered if he was enough for Noah. Enough to keep him. Enough to heal him. Enough to make him stay. Noah, on the other hand, was passionate yet restless, afraid of giving too much of himself and losing control. He loved Nick with every fiber of his being, but that same love scared him. He wasn't used to feeling so vulnerable, to needing someone so much. So, sometimes, he pushed Nick away. Not because he stopped loving him, but because he didn't know how to handle the weight of loving him so completely. Their emotions became both their anchor and their storm. Every fight between them was charged with the pain of love unspoken, and the fear of love fading. They hurt each other with words they didn't mean, then spent sleepless nights regretting them. Yet, even in the midst of anger, there was tenderness. The unspoken truth that neither could truly walk away. They were trapped in a cycle of breaking and mending, each time realizing that their love was stronger than their pride, but still struggling to control the emotions that tore them apart. Sometimes, silence spoke louder than shouting. There were nights when Nick would stare at the ceiling, wondering if Noah still felt the same, while Noah would sit by the window, fighting the urge to call him. Both wanted to reach out, but neither knew how to bridge the distance their emotions had created. Yet, despite the chaos, their hearts kept finding their way back to each other. They apologized without words. A look, a touch, a breath that said, "I still care." Their emotional conflict wasn't a sign of weakness, but proof of how deeply they loved. They weren't perfect lovers, but they were real ones. Flawed, scared, passionate, and honest. Every argument, every tear, every moment of silence became part of their love story. It taught them that love isn't about never fighting. It's about fighting for each other, even when it hurts. And through every storm of emotion, Nick and Noah learned the hardest truth of all. That love is not about avoiding conflict, but about surviving it together. Nick and Noah's love existed in a space where reason had no power. It wasn't something they could explain or justify, it simply existed, wild and undeniable. From the outside, their relationship might have seemed impossible. Too intense, too unpredictable, too fragile to last. Yet somehow, it did. What they felt for each other went beyond ordinary affection. It was the kind of love that defied rules, logic, and even their own understanding. It didn't follow patterns or expectations. It just grew, like something sacred that neither time nor circumstance could erase. There were moments when both of them questioned it. Nick, with his calm and thoughtful nature, tried to make sense of what they had, to fit it into reason. But every time he tried, love slipped through his fingers like sand. Noah, fiery and impulsive, often laughed at the idea of explaining something so unexplainable. He believed that what they shared wasn't meant to be understood, only felt. Together, they existed in a balance between sense and surrender, between what the mind could rationalize and what the heart refused to let go of. Their love was full of contradictions. They fought fiercely, yet they couldn't stand being apart. They said things they didn't mean, then held each other as if their lives depended on it. They were opposites in many ways. Nick's calm steadiness clashing with Noah's wild energy. But that contrast only deepened their connection. What they lacked in logic, they made up for in devotion. Their love didn't make sense, but it made them feel alive in ways nothing else ever had. It wasn't safe or predictable, but it was real. And that was all that mattered to them. people around them often didn't understand. They questioned why Nick kept forgiving Noah, or why Noah kept coming back no matter how hard things got. But love beyond logic doesn't need approval. It doesn't need to be tidy or reasonable. It's the kind of love that makes people believe in something greater. The kind that survives distance, silence, and doubt. Nick and Noah weren't together because it was easy. They were together because it was impossible not to be. Even when they drifted apart, something always pulled them back. It wasn't habit or guilt. It was love that defied explanation. No matter how much they tried to move on, the universe seemed to push them toward each other again, as if their hearts spoke a language only they could understand. Every reunion felt inevitable, every goodbye temporary. In the end, Nick and Noah learned that not all love stories are meant to be logical. Some are meant to challenge reason. To show that the heart doesn't follow rules. Their love wasn't perfect, but it was powerful. A reminder that the most extraordinary connections can't be analyzed or explained. Sometimes, the most beautiful things in life simply exist because they are meant to. And Nick and Noah's love was exactly that, beyond logic, beyond fear, beyond reason, but never beyond feeling. Nick and Noah's connection feels like something written in the stars, an invisible thread that pulls them toward each other, no matter how far apart life tries to push them. From the moment they met, there was an undeniable spark. Not just attraction, but a deeper recognition, as if their souls remembered something their minds could not. They could sit in silence for hours and still feel, as if they were having the most profound conversation. Every glance carried meaning. Every touch felt like a promise, and every word shared between them carried a weight that words alone could never explain. Their bond was built not on perfection but on understanding, on the quiet comfort of knowing that even in their flaws, they were safe with each other. Their connection wasn't something that needed constant explanation. It simply was. They didn't need grand gestures or endless affirmations to prove their love. It lived in the little things. The way Nick remembered Noah's favorite song, or how Noah always sensed when Nick was struggling even before he said a word. It was in the late night talks where they dreamed about impossible futures, and in the mornings when they said nothing at all, but somehow felt everything. They could fight, disagree, even walk away for a while, but the pull between them never faded. It was magnetic, unshakable, almost cruel in how deeply it tied them together. Life tested their bond more than once. Distance, misunderstanding, and fear all tried to break them apart, but every trial only revealed how unbreakable their connection truly was. When one fell, the other rose to catch them. When one lost hope, the other became their light. Their love wasn't always easy. Sometimes it was painful, sometimes confusing, but it was real. They didn't just complete each other. They challenged each other to grow, to heal, and to face the parts of themselves they'd rather hide. It was a love that demanded courage, a connection that refused to be ordinary. There were moments when they doubted everything. When reason told them to let go, when pride tried to build walls between them. Yet, no matter how hard they tried to move on, they always found their way back. It wasn't just fate or coincidence, it was choice. They kept choosing each other. Even when love didn't make sense. Their souls had intertwined in a way that defied logic, becoming reflections of one another's strength and vulnerability. Nick and Noah's story reminds us that some bonds can't be measured or explained. They exist beyond time, beyond distance, beyond reason. Their connection wasn't perfect, but it was pure, raw, honest, and eternal. In a world full of temporary moments and fragile emotions, what they shared was something unbreakable. It wasn't about being inseparable every second. It was about knowing that no matter what storms came their way, their hearts would always find a way back to each other. Two souls, endlessly connected by love that refused to fade. Nick and Noah's love was never flawless, yet that was exactly what made it so breathtaking. It wasn't a fairy tale where everything was perfect and easy. It was a story carved from mistakes, misunderstandings, and forgiveness. Their love had cracks, but through those cracks, light found its way in. It was human, messy, and unpredictable. A kind of love that tested their patience, pride, and vulnerability, yet made them stronger each time they fell apart and came back together. The beauty of their relationship didn't come from perfection. It came from their willingness to embrace the imperfections that made them who they were. They each carried their own scars. Nick with his quiet insecurities and Noah with his fear of losing control. Together, they collided like waves against rock, sometimes soft, sometimes destructive, but always real. They hurt each other, not out of cruelty, but out of fear and misunderstanding. Yet every argument, every tear, and every apology brought them closer to understanding what love truly meant. It wasn't about always being right or always being happy. It was about being honest. Raw enough to show the parts of themselves they usually hid from the world. Their whole fault, the mistake that nearly tore them apart, became the moment that defined them. It forced them to face the fragility of what they had, and the depth of what they could lose. For a while, their hearts were heavy with regret. They questioned whether love built on such brokenness could survive. But love, as they learned, isn't meant to be flawless. It's meant to be forgiven, rebuilt, and redefined. They didn't erase their mistakes, they learned from them. They didn't hide their flaws. They learned to love each other through them. What made their relationship so beautiful was the way they saw each other. Not as perfect beings, but as imperfect souls trying their best. Nick loved Noah's stubbornness, because it came from passion. Noah adored Nick's quiet strength because it came from empathy. They learned to see beauty in the moments that didn't go right. The late night arguments that ended in laughter. The tears that turned into hugs. The silence that spoke louder than words. Their love wasn't a perfect picture. It was a living, breathing story filled with chaos and care, pain and peace. In a world that often romanticizes perfection, Nick and Noah's story was a reminder that beauty can exist in brokenness. Their flaws didn't make their love weaker. They made it real. They taught each other that it's okay to fall apart, as long as you're willing to build again. Their love wasn't about pretending to be flawless, but about finding grace in the mess. And in that imperfection, they discovered something timeless. A love that was flawed, yes, but infinitely beautiful, because it was theirs.